All right, homie. Let me ask you a question. Let's start off.
First off, it's good to see you.
Yes.
This is how, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is how it works now in the future. We just talk through computers to each other. It's happening. Have a bite.
All right, here's my question. 4 years to do this album.
Yeah. Maybe longer.
Okay, what is the reason? Like, there's obviously a reason for that. There's probably multiple reasons. What happened that, because when you started doing it, you probably weren't thinking this is going to take 4 years.
No. Well, what happened was I approached Gavin probably about 4 or 5 years ago and said, hey, I'd like to make a Triggerman record, like a new one. Because like, we put out a record called Learning to Lie that came out in like 2011, but that's really just older songs demoed and, we were demoed being recorded. So there wasn't really any new music. But I was like, I really want to make some music with Triggerman, which would be like, 20 something years since we made a record, right? And Gavin wasn't really into the idea. He just was like, I don't know. I don't think so. And I'm like, all right, well, why don't you think about it? And he kind of thought about it, and he was like, yeah, I'd like to make a record. Let's do it, but I don't, what kind of record are we going to make? Because I don't think he was really interested in doing, I think he was playing with Done Dying at the time, maybe. So I don't think he was really interested in doing that kind of stuff. Nothing against it. I'm just saying he was kind of already doing stuff, I think, like that. It was kind of hardcore-ish. And so then I really liked this band called Wire, but I like they're a band from a punk band from the 70s, and they have like a laser, but I don't really, that stuff is okay. Pink Flag's their classic album, but when they got older, they started making these really interesting kind of jammy electronic type records. It's just fucking cool shit. And it's just not, it doesn't really have formula to it, but it's just catchy. And so I hit Gavin onto Wire, and I was like, you should listen to the Later Day Wire stuff. And we should do something kind of similar that's just kind of no rules and write whatever. And we started writing. The first songs were kind of Triggerman. They were pretty Triggerman standard stuff. And then when we got to about, I know I'm babbling, dude.
No. This is,
it's a long record, but it's a long.
No, dude. This is meant to be long because I've written down a couple more questions.
Okay, so here's why it took so long. Is as we started making it, it got bigger and more complex. And we're only going in, it's not like, when I say 4 years, we're going to the studio for say 3 weeks and then not coming back for 2 or 3 months.
Right.
But we jammed in the studio together. We demoed these songs. We recorded Derek O'Brien's studio, so DOP Sound. He plays drums on the record. And we were able to demo there, kind of play live. And then I literally drove around in my car for months at night. I just do on drives and sing in the car and work on stuff and work on phrasing and stuff. And then we would go and record. And then we would go, it doesn't sound that good. Let's come back. I want to change these vocals. And while I'm doing that, Gavin starts coming with this electronic stuff and keyboards. And then this record takes this weird shape because Gavin starts layering all this amazing, intricate stuff. And we're like, okay, now this is cool. So this is different than anything I've really heard right now. So it gets in my head then, we should try to connect all the songs so they flow as one music piece. And then, so we do that. So the songs, we start jamming out longer. So there's parts so you can kind of connect the songs. So there's longer intros and long outros, right? And then years ago, we were in Triggerman. We wanted to call our second album A Place in the Sun because it was Gavin's, it's a movie. It's a 1951 movie starring Montgomery Clift and Elizabeth Taylor, a young Elizabeth Taylor. And so Gavin loved that movie, and it was, Gavin, he's an interesting dude. So he's like, he always wanted to call it Place of Sun. So I said, should we call that record Place of Sun? He's like, yeah, maybe. No, I don't know. Let's think of a better name. And then I started thinking about it, and I'm like, what we should do is we should make a concept album that's kind of based on this movie, because the movie, if you know it, it's a very it's taken from a book that was written in the late 40s, and it's kind of a very, at the time it must have been shocking, the book and the movie, because it's not, there's no heroes. Montgomery Clift, who plays a guy called Charles Eastman, who's not he's like a social climber. He's craving social status and richness, and he gets in a dilemma and ends up murdering a woman who's pregnant with his child, Well, he doesn't murder, but he doesn't help. He drowns, right? I don't want to spoil the movie, but it's 1951, so it's on you if you haven't seen it yet. But the point is like it's an interesting movie, and it's an interesting snapshot of America on a darker side, because this is like after World War II, so America's like woo, and this kind of book and stuff is like there's a status, there's like social classism in this country. There's the haves and the have-nots. There's religion plays a part of it. So it's very interesting, and I think the themes carry through to today. And I think the lyrics I was writing for this record are relevant today, but they're also kind of relevant then. So then I had this idea, like, let's just take this movie and we'll cut up some of the dialogue, and it will flow as a linear. So if you listen, there's dialogue in this record from this movie. It tells a story. And then this is why it took 4 years.
No, this is great. This is great.
And I was like, like all these songs are kind of, the lyrics are very it's a social commentary. It's like talks a lot about like where we're going as people with social media and like this Instagram fame and like influencers and like all this shit that like Andy Warhol said, everyone is going to experience 15 minutes of fame in their life, and like that's coming true, like because everyone has these 15 minutes of fame, like I'm trending, I'm freaking going viral, and like what is that? And like is that human experience? And then there's still classism in America. There's still social social classism and like haves and have-nots. And as you know, this is being recorded the whole time while Trump is the king of this country. And that, to me, was not a great time and very dark and ugly. And you're seeing a really ugly side of America. So that all comes out in the lyrics. And the point is, we tie these movie quotes, we sequence the thing, and then I go, you know what? Even though these songs are different, they all kind of have the same theme. I'm going to go back into these songs and change a line here or a line there so it references the movie, but still is true to the song I'm singing. So then there's a lyric, so that way when you listen to the whole record, it's a story, one continuous story with different like chapters of a book, like scenes in a movie. And that's why it took 4 years. Because when you hear it, there's so much shit happening in these songs, musically and obviously vocally, that mixing it took almost a year, because we started mixing it when COVID broke out, and it just was so hard.
Were you ever worried? Were you ever worried during this process, as it was getting more layered and layered, like, okay, we're just gonna freaking vaporize everybody, or did you just not care?
No, we don't care, because the beauty about being in Triggerman is it's just me and Gavin's thing. Brett Rasmussen plays bass and Derek O'Brien plays drums, and they're great, and they obviously add to it because they're sensational players. But it's me and Gavin's thing, and we don't care. Like there's fans who like Triggerman, but there's not a lot, and I kind of know them all personally. so it's like, who cares? I'm 50 years old. Let's have fun. But like, we got more and more excited about the idea of like just getting just blowing it out. Like, dude, let's just take it all the way. Because before the idea is when we first started, like, let's write 12, 13 songs, and this time let's really edit it down to like the 10 best ones, and like, instead, and this time we were like, no, we got to keep adding parts. So this needs to be a double album, concept album now. It's like we need more info in there. We need to put some more shit.
How hard did you have to study for yourself A Place in the Sun to sort of have that cohesion?
Dude. So I knew the movie.
Oh, you already knew the movie.
Oh, I already knew the movie, but I didn't have a copy because there was like, it's not available. So I don't have a DVD player, so I was able to get a DVD sent to my friend Brian Balchek, who you obviously know, and we're gonna talk about something with me and him have come up with based on this Triggerman thing that has to do with you. We'll talk about this at some point. Remind me.
I know, we'll do it off the thing, yeah.
Oh, really? Really? No. Anyway, so the point is he was able to digitize that for me and sent it to me, and then I watched the movie. I sent that to Gavin because we needed a digital copy, and then Gavin ripped all the audio into like a 1 hour and 10-minute file, just a dialogue and a stream, and sent that back to me. And then I'm not kidding, I spent at least 100 hours, 100 man hours, listening to the dialogue, listening to the songs, writing down. And then these time sequences of like, okay, so this dialogue, this piece, I kind of had to cut up the dialogue a little bit to flow with the songs. But like, so the dialogue was like, okay, this is an 8-second piece. It's going to go in this part, Gavin. It comes in at the 2-minute and 12-second mark, because we were doing that. Even me and Gavin were doing that in a one file to just go later on in the studio, right? And then Gavin would get it, but we had different time signatures, so he passed it back, and it wasn't all lining up. And so then we got on a Zoom call and spent about 6 hours, like on a Sunday, together going through it and placing it. And he would come up with ideas. But it's really an important part of the story. So yes, it took forever, and I know that movie by heart. Like I could recite that movie for an hour, the dialogue about an hour, because I listened to it all. And then when you're doing something like that, you only have like certain, like, it's not so prevalent in the, like, it's in the songs, but it's not in all the songs. It's not a real, that would be annoying. But the point is you're trying to figure out a way to tell the story. So you have to, where can you get it? Like, what's the real story here about this guy, right? And trying to find the best parts. And then what's interesting about that is the dialogue is so dated in the 50s, but it's interesting. Like, to me, I find it fascinating, like, language, listening to, like, language of that era and compared to language of this era.
Right.
And that's another thing, too, I should mention about the lyrics is, once I kind of got in my head about this movie, I went back into the songs like I was changing some things. I was changing some dialogue to slang or stuff that was from different eras, like 60s and 70s, but not like, just like a word or two here, instead of calling something like I used the word barnstorming in a song, like no one says barnstorming anymore. It was like, so, but that kind of stuff, right? Like, it's just like, just because I want it to seem like it could be at any time, because this movie's at the 50s and these songs are kind of modern, but for the most part, the story is the same no matter what.
You said that you went to Gavin to do a new record, and Gavin kind of wasn't that into it, and at first. And the only reason that surprises me is the Gavin that I've always sort of known is a Gavin that's always writing stuff. I remember when early days of Triggerman, you were like, dude, I can't keep up.
Yeah.
Is that still happening, or?
I think so. Well, I don't think he was that prevalent writing. Maybe he was. I mean, I'm speaking for him. I don't actually know. I think his mentality was, I don't want to, like Triggerman's Gavin's band. I mean, I'm in it too, but he started, it's very important to him to he's protective of it, because it's like, wasn't the most popular band, but he put a lot of like his heart into it at the beginning, I think, like we all do. And so I think he didn't really want to make he's worried about making a Triggerman record that's like, it sucks. I mean, it's kind of like, we don't put the time in, and they're just songs, and like, yeah, we wrote 10 songs and 2 of them are cool, the rest are like whatever. And so I think it was like that. But once he got in a groove and started writing, he was writing like prevalent. I mean, he's poured out 8 more songs since then, because you just got and me too with lyrics. Like, we just got in this groove together where like it just clicked and everything was flowing. And I think the thing about Gavin, if you know anything about him, he's one of the most creative humans you could ever meet. I mean, he's a painter, and he's an amazing painter. He's a musician, and he's very creative with like, I'm not a great singer, and he's not technically a great guitar player, but he's able to work within this space better than anyone, I think. Like, I think these songs musically, like, is about as good as it gets.
And one thing about Triggerman that, I mean, I don't know if people know this, but I know you guys, I've been around the band. You guys have never just gone in and recorded a record and the record's been done. Like, from Dead Like Me to Learning to Lie to this, I mean, it's always been, to my knowledge, a fairly elongated process, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
this is the longest it's ever been. I mean, Brett made a joke on Facebook the other day about, like, he's like, man, it was really fun making this record. Feels like it took 2 years to make. Oh wait, it did, because we literally were in the studio for 2 years. And it's just funny. But I think it's like one of those things, like, because the point is, it doesn't matter, and like there's no freedom to it, and we don't care, because we want to make it for ourselves. So like, yes, it's flattering, and you want people to like it, and be like, oh, like. And I've been really, some of my peers that I just have said really nice things about it. I sent it out to about maybe 20 people, and like, it's all been positive, and I think some of these people are my friends. They would be honest with me, like. And like last night, I was hanging out with Sterling Wilson, and I played it for him. And if you know Sterling is brutally honest as it gets. And he didn't like all of it, but some stuff he loved. And he was just like, dude, this is like this is great. And he even, I think, texted Gavin from there and just was like, this is an amazing thing. And he's Sterling. He's one of the most critical people you ever meet.
Technically,
so I was like, okay, wow, if Sterling likes this, and he's getting it.
Well, technically, that's the second Triggerman bass player.
Yes, he was in Triggerman for when John Miles was the singer. He was the bass player.
Yeah.
But I think it's like he's just. I think there's kind of a there's some kind of humor in all of it that everyone's like, you know, like obviously Brian Balchek listened to it, and some of my friends like Sterling and stuff is like, oh, wait, this is a Triggerman album? You know what I mean? Because it's got some elements of Triggerman, but it's, you know, it's out there. Like it's like really going for it. And we think that's kind of fun because, like I said, once we started realizing let's bloat it up and make it like more of this conceptual piece, and like we're making it for ourselves anyway. So yes, it's about an hour long, which is a lot to ask of someone. But if you spend the hour with it and listen to it how it's supposed to be played, which is in one thing, I think you'll dig it. I think people would dig it. I think it's interesting.
Did the lapses, did this 4-year process with all the layers, it sounds like it helped, right? Or no?
Oh, yeah, I made the songs. Dude, the songs, every song on there has went through at least 2 to 3 revisions. Some went up to like 6 or 7 revisions. And each one, there's only maybe one song or maybe 2 where the vocals stayed kind of how they were. Like I would go back and completely change it. And then once Gavin started laying this electronic stuff within the music, it kind of changed some things, but it just made the song so much better. There were songs that we talked about dropping. There's a song on there called We've Got You All Figured Out, which is kind of in the middle of the record. That song went through such changes. I think I played an early version of it for you when we were driving. It was a pretty standard Triggerman song, but it's very like kind of plodding and mid-tempo, and the vocals weren't that great. And we always thought that we would cut that. Well, this is where I get better, is Gavin was frustrated with that, and he was kind of getting this electronic space, so he made this, he put these like keyboard layers and a drum machine layer that goes on with the live drums, dropped that in that song and changed it for the better. Like, I was just like, whoa, like, now it's one of my favorite songs. And then Jeff Caudell told me that was one of his favorite songs too, and like, that means a lot to me too, because like, yeah, I will say this to anyone, Jeff Caudell's a contemporary musician making music still, and I think his acoustic stuff that's on Bandcamp is his best stuff. I think it's like really cool. I think the last Game Face record those guys made in 2014, which is called
Now.
What's that thing? It's called
Now.
2015. Yeah, this is Now. I think it's really good because I think there's a freedom to. I think, and Jeff, like, there's a freedom to that when you're older and there's no agenda. Like, we're Triggerman, we're not going to go on tour. We're not gonna, like, it doesn't. If you're into it, cool. It's not like, okay, it's for us.
You bring up something. You're not going to go on tour, but is there a possibility, should things, continue, hopefully things get better? And because, I mean, I work with a boxing promoter. He's planning on putting on shows with an audience in June.
Yeah.
Could it happen? Okay, if things were allowed to happen, could it happen?
I think, what do you think? You see my cat?
Yeah, come on, have the cat come in. ISIS.
Here's we talked about a little bit, because here's the thing is Triggerman, the way this record, obviously we would play some older songs, but this record is such a piece. We would have to have other musicians involved. And the thing I said, and it might happen. If it happened, it would be 2022. We talked about it. Maybe doing one show.
Ice opens.
Ice opens, yeah. But the point is to do the show like what is true, because I feel like we've kind of become very more sophisticated with this music, and the live show, if you know anything about it, it never was that. It could be on sometimes, but it was hit or miss with Triggerman live. So I think it would be hard to pull off a live show the way I see it now, because the way we've created music, I'm like, well, if we're gonna do a live show, the visuals would have to be amazing. We'd have to have like stuff behind us and weird lights. It would have to be a production.
You've always wanted that. You've always wanted to do that.
Yes. Well, that's how it's supposed to be. So maybe if next year, maybe it'd be fun to do at least one show, but it would be like I'd have to put a lot into it. And like this record took a lot. I mean, I can't do, like, I don't want to talk about music for like a year, because we just finished mastering this like a couple weeks ago, and I'm like exhausted with it. Like drained from making. I mean, it sounds corny, but like creatively drained. And so I think Gavin is too. So we're just like, a live show, like, yeah, all right, we'll talk about it in like a year.
Why is it, do you think, it seems, as we get older, our ability, like, for instance, one of my favorite musicians is this guy, Klaus Schultz. He might be dead. There's another guy named Steve Roach, but Klaus Schultz was in Tangerine Dream. He's, he's one of those guys. And I just find that when I talk to people like you or like Gavin or certain musicians, not everybody, but a lot, especially from hardcore, there's something about this type of electronic music, this sort of industrial electronic music, and the way that it's sort of used on this Triggerman record, what do you think it is about it that sort of draws us and other people to it?
Well, I think like I sent it to a friend of mine, Zach Blair, plays in Rise Again, and that's another guy who I respect, and I think he really liked it, and he said I hear a lot of influences here. I hear Embrace, I hear Dead Nasty, I hear Discord stuff, I hear some Joy Division, Depeche Mode, like the electronic stuff,
Yep.
and another guy said the same thing. It was like he said, "Sound had some LCD Sound System in, which is a band I love. It's electronic, and like Gang of Four." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's awesome," because those are all our influences. I'm a hardcore dude, but like I love Depeche Mode and The Cure and The Smiths. Like those are some of my favorite bands of all time, and then they're in Gavin's too. So I feel like it creeps into the music because there's no agenda with this. Like it doesn't like, it's not like sales driven or anything. It's not like and that's why we were able to get away with doing something like this. We were like an active band. It'd be really tough to make a double concept album. And just be like, hey man, like we're going on Warped Tour. You guys, what? So there's we don't have to worry about that. So it's kind of made it, when I was, like I said, I was playing with Sterling. Sterling's played in No for an Answer and, Triggerman, early Triggerman stuff with Gavin. And he was like, wow, he was so stoked on Gavin's musicianship and how far it's come from where he started in No for an Answer to now, because it's a guy who's worked on his craft still. Gavin's been around, but he's just getting better and better as a musician. He's like, right now he's at his peak of being a creative, like, guitar player. Sterling was just like, and he goes, this is so great because I can tell this is just Gavin unleashed. Like, there's nothing restraining Gavin on this. There's no one. I mean, we're great partners in this, and we got in the groove, but we're very respectful of each other's lane. Like, whatever Gavin wants to do musically and for the art, like for the cover stuff, yeah, there's no one's gonna. It's his baby. Like, run with it. And he wants our opinion on stuff, and the same thing with the lyrics. Like, we made some suggestions as it Brett and Derek and stuff on vocal melodies and stuff, but like he's never, he's always liked my lyrics and stuff. But we got in a good group. But I think like Sterling's right. Like, this is a dude who's he's a family man. He's got his, he doesn't really work, I don't think, anymore. But he's just like in his lab making this music, and everything that's influenced him comes out. And it happens to be because we're from the same genre or the same era. That it's in the same stuff I like. So it was. I think that's what it is. But it comes out in a different way. It's not like, like I can hear some Depeche Mode there, and I can hear like The Cure. There's a song called Trapped in the Blue that's like, it's pretty close to a Cure ripoff at the end, like the way the guitar tones are and stuff. It's dreamy, like a dreamy song. But for the most part, like I feel like it doesn't really, it's a bunch of things and you can't really define it, which is what I really like about it. Like you can't do it. It's definitely not a hardcore record.
Well, speaking of that, going back to the first record, Dead Like Me, it's interesting because anyone that knows you, oh, Nelson, he's this fun guy, and you are. And you don't take a lot of things seriously. Not like you're laughing at, at just everything, but I'm just saying, you've always sort of had that attitude. And it's interesting because if you read the lyrics from that record up to now, and let's start with a song like Time Divides, and you and I go back and forth and we have fun and we talk about that song, but you read those lyrics, like, swore I'd never give in, I know I said until the end, I like all that stuff, and I said that backwards, but the point of what I'm saying is like, they're almost like sad lyrics, almost like,
oh yeah.
Is that, where with you does that come from?
Yeah, I think like, we've been friends a long time, like, and I am like, I think there's humor in me. I would say I had a great childhood, and punk rock and hardcore and being part of the Sloth Food and all that stuff saved my life. Like, being part of the Uniform Choice family, like, that saved my life. But it gave a kid who was in a really weird situation at home with an alcoholic father who is, I've learned as now I'm 50, like I have a lot of appreciation and love for my dad because he had some amazing qualities. But at the time, he was not a great father, and he had a horrible drinking problem. So that's why I got into straight edge in high school. So there was a lot of anger and low self-esteem and bitterness. Punk rock helped that. Being part of like a gang, like the Sloth Food, my friends helped me get to that, and humor helped me because that's what usually happens. Like, comedians are like, usually dark people, because it's a way to like mask your pain and have stuff. And so I think the Triggerman lyrics have always been, they were really honest lyrics. I mean, they still are. You know, this new record's different because the lyrics are more of a commentary on society, but there is some autobiographical stuff in there. There always is, you know. And like, but yeah, that's what it was. And the Triggerman thing, like, I was a huge fan of Smith. That stuff's depressing. Depeche Mode is dark. The Cure is dark, depressing. So I feel, and I love the Embrace record. I mean, you can hear that influence on anything I do. I just love it. So, and that's I think Ian's going through a dark phase there, right? I mean, those lyrics are dark, but kind of the same age I was when I'm doing Triggerman. So it makes sense because you're in this like kind of 20, 21, still trying to figure stuff out, you know. And then, yeah, and then I ended up kind of like being like, well, fuck being depressed, and ended up being a pretty happy dude.
A few bands later, Carrie Nation took the stage. Shortly after that, Judge, a band from New York, took the stage. Andrew and I left a few songs into their set. As I was leaving, Nelson introduced me to Greg Brown, Scott Sundahl, Paul T., and other members of a group known as the Orange County Sloth Crew. Eventually, they would nickname me Mushnik, which was a character I had been in a high school play. On the ride home, I had no idea that those people I had just met would become and would be the gateway to the best friends I would ever have.